Greetings, and I am here with yet another deck video for you guys. I was just scrolling through Gwent up, and I was just kind of looking for another deck to kind of use for my next deck video, and I came across this one. It's based on Dwarves, but it's using Francesca as the leader. So I think when I tried doing all dwarves, I think I used Brewer Hoog just because he was the other dwarf, but then I don't really think that he has that much synergy in terms of his dwarves. I mean, he kind of does a little bit, but I think Francesca provides synergy in a different way. So it's a dwarf control deck, as there are some key cards that here that kind of give the control element. For example, the Great Oak is a very control heavy card because you need to have a lot of units on one row to kind of use its ability to maximize its ability. So same as last time, there's going to be no gameplay here. I'm just kind of going to describe all of the cards sort of one by one and just think about situations that I would use them on. And if you guys have any changes that you guys would like to make, definitely let me know in the comment section below, because that'd be great. And I know there's an update video that just came out today. I want to do a reaction video on that, but I kind of want to wait until like the write-up's been made, because like I don't exactly know what to think. Like I know for a fact that Northern Realms, the only really main use for it, in my opinion, based on how I play, is the Blue Straps Commando, because that's really how I just like to deck thin. Using Siege, Charges, Orders, I feel like those abilities are a bit too slow unless they get the good support that they need. So I did read a little bit on it. I am pretty impressed to see there's a lot of boosting now with the Northern Realms faction. So hopefully they kind of, identify them as that. But anyway, that's all for a different video for a different day. So for now, let's just get straight to the sort of deck list guideline. So I've already started with, so the reason why I figured this would be a control-based deck is, again, the Great Oak. Vigo's Muzzle is there for literally the disruption. Believe it or not, I think this is going to be my first or second time ever using Vigo's Muzzle. I don't often use this card because I don't really try to disrupt, but I think it's time I start implementing a little bit of disruption in some of the decks that I play with. So in this case, and it's also in the deck list that I found, so I thought I'd give it a try. So that's why Vigo's Muzzle here. It's good for that disruption. If they have any engines that they're going to try and run and base their field on that round, then I'm just going to take it with Vigo's Muzzle. And honestly, it is a very annoying card. I've wanted to concede from it many times, but never really did. Novigradian Justice is back, similar to the deck building challenge, if you guys saw that. I used Novigradian Justice for kind of the same reason, to get out the dwarves. Oh no, sorry, it's not the deck building challenge, it's the Brewer Hoog Dwarves deck. But watch the deck building challenge too, why not? So Novigradian Justice, I mainly used it for the Mahakam Volunteers to make sure I get 3 of them out. Or if I can use it to get the Dwarven Mercenary, that's an extra engine to go on the field for that extra poke that if you need it. Because these cards do tend to go out very easily, because, every engines are always like a big cause. A big target. They have targets on their back for removal, honestly. So, that's what Novigradian Justice is there for. Ithleen and the Dwarven Agitators. I'm just going to get these out of the way. I'm mostly going to use them to buff up Sheldon Skaggs. Similar to this deck list, I did not take a look, but this deck list does not have any Hawker Smugglers. So the only boosts I'm really going to get for Sheldon Skaggs are Ithleen and the Dwarven Agitator for the Dennis Kramer, which is actually okay, because I'm not heavily basing it off of like boosting control, and the Hawker Smuggler is kind of a slow card anyway. It's sort of sharing between boosting Sheldon Skaggs for that pretty strong swing. So the maximum I'm going to get for Sheldon Skaggs is going to be 12. Like a 12-point swing. So it's going to be a 24-point swing, which is, don't get me wrong, it's still a big swing. But like, I'm not going to get greedy, of course, and just like, add in the Hawker Smuggler. So that's probably why they didn't add it. Sorry, I took a close look at this deck. It's just it still caught me off guard a little bit. Because the Great Oak is here as sort of also a second finisher. So another good thing you want to have in your decks as well is you want to have more than one more than one different type of mechanic you'd want to have in this deck, because you want to be able to, because you have 3 rounds, right? You gotta win 2 of them. So you want to make sure you have either two different strategies or one sort of ongoing strategy that you could use throughout the whole game. But you want to make sure you have a plan A and a plan B, no matter what. And if it goes to round 3, Plan C's there. Plan C is more like the sort of the slower end mechanic. It won't be heavily based off now unless you choose to dry pass, because a lot of people dry pass round 2. So that's why it's mostly plan A and B. Unless they try to make it go to a short round, in which case I think that's what I would use Francesca Findabair for that kind of sort of shortish third round. Obviously, if it goes to a long throw, I'm still going to use her anyway. But the only choices I would be able to use for her are novigradian Justice and Vigo's Muzzle. So essentially, I have 2 novigradian Justices here for that sort of extra deck thin, which is actually something that I like. Normally, I would have this, where is that card? I would have the Brokilon Sentinels there just because of that, again, that extra deck thin, but I think you can only do well with so much deck thin, so like I don't want to like make it extra. So I think this will be good enough. Plus, it's a bit of a strong tempo if you can get that pulled off as well. And yeah, so next card on the list is Gabor Zigrin, which is sort of the core of all dwarves. You can choose to sort of use him as the carryover for round 3 if your opponent decides to dry pass round 2, which I've mentioned is pretty common, especially if A, they're either 2 cards down, or B, they think that they're going to get a advantage on the 3rd round because they would get last say. So the use of Gabor Zigrin, unless their deck is actually super strong and super up-tempo that they'll actually try and go 2-0 against you, in which case you need to be prepared. So Gabor Zigrin is there to sort of the Dwarves core, as I guess pretty self-explanatory. Gain resilience for that carryover or immunity if you choose to play it in the 3rd round. And of course, it's an engine, gets boosted every time a dwarf shows up. Sheldon Skaggs already kind of went over. Dennis Kramer was sort of the other giveaway that this was going to be a control deck, because either A, it becomes an 8, it's either an 8 provision for 7 power, or if you use it by the way I use it and stack up all the dwarves in a range row and just use Dennis Kramer, just boost them all up by 1 like that. And it's actually proven to be a pretty lifesaver for me. I'll leave a link to the Bruverhoog Dwarves in the description below to see how the gameplay could be sort of similar to this. It's just using a different leader, and I'm just trying it out to see what it would be like. Next card in the list is Barclay Els, which is a boost unit by 1 for every dwarven ally. Again, similar to Dennis Kramer, relies on field control, having all these units out on, having all these dwarves out on the field to get the maximum value that can possibly get. In order for you to match its provision to its power, you only need 3 dwarves, but of course you don't just want to settle for equal, especially for cards like these that give you the opportunity to get more power. Next on the list is Milva. Again, another scoia'tael engine. No matter what you're running, as long as you have any scoia'tael units in your deck, Milva's always going to get boosted from them. And she's immune, so you can't really target her unless you have cards like Scorch or Curse of Corruption or Pandemic. Depends on how well you calculate the field. Mahakam Defender. Now, the deck list showed 2 Mahakam Defenders, but I thought that's a little bit too slow. So I actually decided to go with just 1 Mahakam Defender, because I always find that whenever I play Mahakam Defender, it's always going to get targeted by these removal cards. And removing 1 Mahakam Defender kind of lets me shift my focus from Ithleen and the Agitator to the Sheldon Skaggs. But you know what? Even if I just do Ithleen to Sheldon Skaggs, again, I'm going from a 24 point to a 16 point if I choose to use the Dwarven Agitators on the Mahakam Defender. So again, Sheldon Skaggs does have a lot of value here simply just by adding an Ithleen. So just 1 unit of Mahakam Defender, which is not bad, because if I use Dwarven Agitator on it, it's going to be a 6 already upon setting. Actually, no, it's going to be 7 because it already gets 1 at the end of the turn, and your opponent would have to use a pretty tall removal card to get rid of it. Can't use Geralt, gotta wait an extra turn for that, which is just an extra turn for him to waste. So, you know, pretty flexible options there with a Mahakam Defender engine and the Sheldon Skaggs removal, which is great. The unit I chose to replace the Mahakam Defender with is Panther. Now, of course, I like Panther because of its ability to do quite a bit of damage, actually. Damaging a non-scoia'tael enemy unit by 3. A lot of engine cards are 3 power. The ones that are 4 power are just completely out of its reach. But those 3 power engines can be easily removed by the Panther. And obviously, if I'm playing a mirror, like when I say mirror, like a faction similar deck, like if I'm playing another scoia'tael deck, I have no choice but to take off Panther, which means I'm going to have to prepare for the use of Mahakam Defender. So it does provide me with that secondary option as well. And you always want to be a little bit more flexible with the kinds of cards you have in your deck. And that's the only main difference I made with this deck. Otherwise, the deck is pretty similar. Cleaver's Muscle. It's good to put a dwarf out there for that shield. It's not going to be targeted at all unless they actually want to spend a card to destroy its shield or whatnot. But it's good for that dwarf. Again, using the dwarf type here. So you're powering up Milva because it's half scoia'tael, but it's still scoia'tael. You're gonna power Milva. You're gonna power up Sheldon Skaggs, which is always nice. It's gonna be an extra help for Dennis Kramer. Well, I mean, any unit you put there's gonna be help for Dennis Kramer. So it doesn't even matter. But it's gonna be good for Barclay Ailes as well. It is a bit of a slow card because it does nothing but gives you a shield, but that's also why it's a 5/5, which is actually pretty strong if you think about it. Dwarven Mercenaries. Here's the engine for the main bronze engine for this deck. So Dwarven Mercenary, it's gonna let you poke your opponent, but again, every time I try to play an engine, it always gets removed. But in a way, that's not so bad because you can either use it as a decoy or you can actually use it to its full potential by letting it damage your opponent one by one, because that progressive poking is actually going to cause a really big effect, especially like if they kind of ignore it and just like, oh, he's just doing 1 damage per turn. It's not going to be a big deal. But no, it's actually a big deal because of how low scoring these games kind of go, at least compared to before it became Homecoming. So that's why Dwarven Mercenaries is there. And again, if you want to use Novigradian Justice on it, feel free. Extra engine there for you if you really want to commit to that poking. Because again, you have Francesca. You can use it again for the control. That's what I'm saying. Plan A, Plan B. You always gotta have both. Mahakam Volunteers kind of already went over this. It's the control for it's the sort of what I'm going to use to fill up the board with the fastest with an Novigradian Justice. You fill up 3. Well, it's going to be 4 because you need to have a dwarf in the range row anyway. So you're guaranteed 4 there if you pull off that combo correctly. And a good combination finish I always do is Mahakam Volunteers on range row. Bunch of units. Dennis Kramer in the end there. You kind of want to do that when it's a bit of a shorter round because Dennis Kramer doesn't give you that much value, but it gives you enough. So that's why the Mahakam Volunteers are there. Now, in the other Brotherhood Dwarf video that I did before, I did not have the Mahakam Guard, and I kind of regret that because it actually is another, again, Dwarf reliant. It boosts itself by the amount of Dwarven allies in this row. So on the row, which means it's going to get a maximum of 9, which obviously probably is not going to be the case. But again, you only need 3 dwarves to match its provision cost of its power. But of course, you want to go more than that. So you fill up that range row, you stick in a couple Mahakam Guards there towards the end, and then Dennis Kramer for the sort of the coup d'etat. So that's ideally what you want to use it for. Again, you can also use it in the first row if you think things are going too slow for you. If you think things are going too slow for you, that's maybe when you want to decide to get rid of some of your slower cards and wait for your good combos and your engines to like the second round or the third round. So yeah, there's a couple of things here to think about. Brighthead Dragoon, again, I think they're just meant for movement. So if you feel like your range row is lacking and you need dwarves or melee row, honestly, it doesn't matter. It depends on what you use. I'm mainly referring to the range row because I mainly use Gabor as a ranged unit, which gives him the immunity, which means he pretty much can't be touched until, again, you use those 3 cards I mentioned. Scorch. Gigni works too, I suppose. You can use Gigni as well. So other than that, Scorch, Course of Corruption, Gigni, Pandemic, depends on how it's timed. If they calculated it well, then kudos to them. So Brighthead Dragoon is you can either disrupt your opponents by preventing them from using their ability because they're on the wrong row, or you can use them to fill up your entire row with 1 unit, which will which will make Dennis Kramer and the Great Oak stronger. So remember, the Great Oak, the very first card on the list, we cannot forget, also relies on a lot of units being on 1 row for it to be activated. Or if you find that your range row is already too fill and you don't have Great Oak or Dennis Kramer down there, or melee row, again, I'm speaking vice versa, then you can use the Brighthead Dragoon. Oh, but here's the thing though, the Brighthead Dragoon you can only activate Brighthead Dragoon to save your units if they are put on the ranged row. So for example, if you have, so actually you can have, if you have 9 units and you don't have Great Oak and or Dennis Kramer in there, you're kind of screwed. You can't really move him with the Brighthead Dragoon because the Brighthead Dragoon needs to be in the range row for you to be able to do that. So a good way for the use of Brighthead Dragoon is if you're not going to use it to disrupt your opponent's row engines, you probably want to fill up your melee row a little bit, and then you want to start luring them into the range row with your Brighthead Dragoon, and then you can start sort of finishing off with Great Oak / or Dennis Kramer. So probably an idea just an idea I'm already thinking off the top of my head before I even play games, is you fill up your melee row with enough dwarves to kind of make your Mahakam guard stronger. And then you'd start moving them to the Redhead Dragoon for that finisher of the Great Oak or Dennis Crammer. You can even use Great Oak on the melee row before you even start bringing the Redhead Dragoon. That is if you have in a lot of units there to sort of do a lot of damage. Because the Great Oak being a 13 provision for an 8 power is actually pretty powerful. But being able to damage the enemy depending on how many units there are to its left, which is what I've seen most people do anyway, just for that pretty big removal, is actually really valuable. So the Redhead Dragoon here is a very underrated card in the deck, but it's going to provide very useful. You just need to be able to sort of calculate your rows pretty well for this. Dwarven Agitator, I kind of already went through it. Again, it could be an ethylene target as well. If you want to give that extra boost to Sheldon Skaggs, then you can do 2, 4. Actually, is that how that works? It's just spawn and summon. I can't remember. I think it's because it's a spawn and summon. So if it's summon, its deployability should activate, which will give that Sheldon Skaggs that extra power if you so need. So again, Novigradian Justice provides a lot of flexibility with this deck because it's a bunch of dwarves. So other than that, its main purpose is to power up Sheldon Skaggs or to power up the Mahakam Defender, depends on which route you're gonna go. And the final card here, the bottom card, is the Dwarven Skirmisher. Pretty tall removal, but if it doesn't remove, then it gets boosted by 1. But most of the time, I probably use it to just like get rid of a unit. But you're gonna make sure they can only target units in the melee row, so make sure they have units in the melee row, because if they start filling up units only in the range row, then this Dwarven Skirmisher is essentially a dead 1-point card and does absolutely nothing. So that was the sort of rundown of the Francesca's Dwarves deck that I found on Gwent Up. I will leave a link to the original deck so you guys can also check that out. If you guys did enjoy this video and you guys were able to follow through what I was saying, because I don't know if I was talking fast or not, please leave a like, leave a comment on any changes you guys would make, or if you guys think the deck is good or the deck is not good. Just let me know in the comment section below. Let me know everything, and consider subscribing, because I have more videos coming up for you guys. And other than that, this is Enzo signing out. I'll see you guys later.